this guy pulled out of, but tanker, set up for it. So, people, just gonna do a little live real quick. It's been a little bit since I did a live. I got things on my mind. I got a guy wanting to be live in my video with a dog. So this is the dog live. I'm just saying. The dog live, and there's a bunch of truckers hiding out in parking spots. The ones that ain't paid for parking, but they're in the paid parking anyway. Shout out to my cheap drivers. Now, I paid for mine. I'm good to go. But I'm just saying, this whole truck stop is not full of people that paid up in here. There's people that's trying to ride the wave and just go with the flow. But we got trucks over here. We got trucks parked all the way to the end, right? That's not even parking. The parking ends. If anybody's actually paying attention, I know they did a study in Congress that said we don't need no more parking. Listen, that's where the parking ends at that concrete. From that row, it stops there. This is the corner. We stacked on the corners. We stacked around the world. And there's people up in here that knows they get paid for parking because they are not going to pay for parking, but they're going to park. And so if somebody comes and paid, right, and they're like, where's my spot? They're going to run around with the parking Nazis in the little golf cart and find out who paid, who didn't. I paid. It's all good. But that's not what this is about. I'm going to have a eaten beef stew. Is that the same dude or another dude with a different dog? I think that's the same. Anyway, we're gonna have a beef stew, and man, this thing here. See, I need another. There we go. That's out the way. I need another mount. Now it's out of the way. It just holds the bottom two corners. All right. If the phone drops, it's because we had an earthquake in the truck. Just saying. But I got beef stew. I got mashed potatoes and gravy. I got some green beans. I hope y'all got food too. Y'all get some popcorn, whatever you want to do. Now, here's what I'm talking about. Okay. A couple things. I'm going to be doing some lives because I'm going to research a few of these stories so that I get all the words that should be included in the story and I tell it proper. But there's stories that are attributed to what Christ did in his lifetime that are not in the Bible. They're extra biblical, but they are stories that people have firsthand knowledge of him. One is where he got a letter and sent a letter back to King Agnar, I believe it was, and he needed healing, and he wound up sending Thaddeus to heal him, and then everybody converted and all that, but it was after he died. Then there was the one where Christ was making these birds out of clay mud, okay, just forming them with his hands. And they came over and someone saw what he was doing and said, you shouldn't be doing that. That's like making idols. You're making, things out of your hand or whatever. And then he looked back at the birds and he clapped his hands. And when he did, all of the clay birds came to life and flew away. Okay. Well, there's some stories that are pretty cool about what Jesus did in his lifetime that didn't quite make it into biblical text, but that they're there and they're relevant. And that's when he was a little kid, So, but anyway, I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm not sure if you people are aware, but in the same way that we have moon cycles and they affect people and stuff, whether you know it or not, and in the same way that we have a Milankovitch cycle, which is every 10 years, the sunspots change on the sun and it goes into a dormant period and then it goes into a hyperactive period. And we're actually out of the dormant period sooner than we were supposed to be by quite a few months, and this never changes. But for some reason, we're in a, a high energy sun event, and so that just tells us that we're going to have some serious problems with satellites and all kinds of stuff real soon, just a few months. But there's also the great year, which is how our solar system goes around the center of the solar system, and it goes into there's what they call the Kali Yuga. There's the golden age. Okay, there's different ages to it because they know what's going to happen. But and also at the same time, we know that we have a torrid meteor shower every year. We go through the same meteorites. One day, something big that came through just like that one did and actually hit Earth and caused a bunch of trouble a while back and caused a flood. Well, it's going to happen again. They're already talking about Apophis. When it comes back around, they're saying, oh, if it goes through a keyhole. They are lying so much. They probably know it's a direct hit. That's just the truth. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying. Every 3,600 years through history, there's been a flood. Not like Noah's Ark, but a global flood that does so much damage and kills so many people and all this that it is a huge thing that every culture's wrote about it. Back in the older texts in China, there was a scribe who wrote down all kinds of things that happened, and they were complaining to the governor in this one text. They were complaining that the floodwaters had came up way up the mountain and that the governor had not done anything about it. And they wound up in the end firing this one governor because of it. The king did, just so that they wouldn't try to run him off. Okay? So, or dynastic leader, not a king. But the point is, that was in China, and that was written down on old paper, and then it was rewritten, and the only existing parchment that's like that's rewritten is on rice paper. It was rewritten, but it was rewritten so far long ago that they know that it's from the original text. So I'm not sure if that was it was one of the good philosophers of China that had a copy of that and that made a copy of it. So about every 3,600 years, and we're due for it. Like, they know. They already know to the point that even though they found Gobekli Tepe, and even though they started excavation on it, when they asked for more money, they got millions. And they covered with a roof covering what's already there, but then they damaged some of it, and it made some of the archaeologists mad. They damaged some of it plowing down and putting in a road to the place. And I think that's so that they can find it after there's a great global flood. Because they said the reason that they are not going to excavate, only 5% of Gobekli Tepe, the oldest structure that's man-made. It's even older than Stonehenge, and it's got more stones and it's bigger of rings than Stonehenge. They already know. Only 5% of it has been excavated, and the reason that the government of that country and other countries that are involved in it, because it's a historical, whatever site's the oldest site, period. The reason they have not excavated Gobekli Tepe anymore, that they gave, is that they are going to leave the excavation of Gobekli Tepe for future generations. In other words, they might as well rebury it because they know there's going to be another flood. That place was buried on purpose. It was a very historical site, even back in antiquity, thousands of years ago. They know that it was buried. Man, what was it? I don't know if it was 10,000 or 15,000 or 20,000 years ago, however long it was buried then, to preserve it. because they knew there was a flood going to happen. They knew it was going to be a catastrophic event. It probably is another asteroid. They probably have a pretty good idea this is cyclical, just like the moon, just like the sun, just like the Milankovitch cycles, and it's coming up and it's any day now. That something will be pulled in. I don't know if it's from our other sun, our second sun, which we do have two suns, two that are, one is dark and you can't see it, okay? It's like a brown dwarf. It affects all the comets that come in. Every time a comet comes in, they'll say, oh, look, it's lighting up brighter. It wasn't supposed to get brighter till it got around our sun. It's because it's affected by that other star that's right there. They know where it's at. They don't want to tell us about it. They'll have to change all the books. They want to keep us dumb on a lot of this stuff. But maybe that gravity from that other star brings in from the asteroid belt an asteroid, a piece of that old planet. I don't know. Maybe it's a whole other Nibiru type planet system that comes flying by every 3,600 years. They seem to know about it. They know this is going to happen. They know it enough that they don't want to dig up Gobekli Tepe. They want to leave it, they said, for future generations. They know. If it had been 1,000 years ago, they would have dug it up. But because there's fixing to be another flood anyway, they might as well leave it buried. So that's what's going on. You need to look up Gobekli Tepe. They even put it up on their website, the reason why they're not going to dig it up any further. So they're not talking about Nibiru, even though it's coming back around. They don't want to talk. They're not talking about Apophis, is what I really want to say. There is an asteroid that's already went by us once. They know if the second time, if it goes through a certain keyhole, the next time it's going to hit. And we just had something that was the size of, they said, it was the size of the Great Pyramid, I believe, and it went by and they didn't even tell us about it. So it flew by the Earth between the sun, between the moon and the Earth. That's how close it was. It was in between the Earth and the moon. They knew it wasn't going to hit us, is what they said. But they didn't tell us about it to the last minute because they won't. But who knows what else is following, trailing behind it in its gravitational pull that it came with. So we're just waiting at this point, and they already know from the bones of all of the mammoths and all of the other giant animals that were standing there and they were eating and they still found food in their mouths and everything else, and they were frozen just about instantly after it because the air from space came in with it. Either way, all of their legs were broken, all towards the same direction. So it's like they're standing there 1 minute and then all of a sudden their legs are broken. Well, we've got a bulge of water that goes around the middle of the Earth all the way around it. We're not a complete circle, no matter how you want to see it. I don't want to hear no flat Earth mess. If that's what you believe in, that's fine, but there's a bulge of water regardless. And any type of asteroid can upset that bulge, any type. Or if the poles were to shift over more, or if a planet came in and the gravitational pull slowed the Earth and the water kept going, it doesn't matter. It's going to upset it. Okay? If our planet turns over on its axis like Mars does every so often, then it's going to be a problem. And they know that something like this happens every 3,600 years. I'm throwing out all these things because I don't know which one they are. I just know it happens. They've looked at the rocks that are in their place, but they know that the magnetic reversal happened because they can see it in the rocks. And this happens where there's a flood every 3,600 years. So I don't know what event causes it, but the bulge of water that goes around, if it came around and was to have hit those animals, that would make sense. They're saying it would hit them at about 600 miles an hour. The wind is going to be at about 600 miles an hour. So I don't expect anybody to be living except for the people that are underground in their bunkers like Bill Gates and them are trying to build. They might even have an exact date when it's going to happen. Okay, richest person on the planet, got all that plan, right? All that money? Yeah. So, but it'll probably flood them and drown them anyway. That's the truth. So we're waiting for it, and that's why they're not digging up Gobekli Tepe. Anybody want to say anything? I'm going to have some beef stew. I'm just chilling. In the meantime, I'm going to live my life to the fullest until such time as it's not full anymore. A lot of people thought they'd be safe going to Arizona. Then they have this war going on in Ukraine, and Russia's already said where they would hit here if they did. They're having some issues there where they're talking about using tactical nukes on the battlefield, and we're starting to make them. They're going cobalt. Everything's going cobalt. Did I say cobalt? Don't say cobalt. Okay? Don't say Manhattan Project. Don't say cobalt. Right? Hear what I'm saying, people? I know what's popping. Okay? It's not good to remote view sometimes. I don't want to know what I know. I don't even want to know what I know. But I will say this. For any of you seers out there, just leave it alone. Just don't even, just seriously. All I know is Russia has the ones they've been testing down there off Antarctica, and that's what's going up, the anomaly that's coming up. And that's why the fish are all trying to leave the water. And then they've done that 3 times, and then there was 3 anomalies. Isn't that a coincidence? And then they turned off the seismic buoys so they wouldn't give them intel to know how powerful their weapon was. But at the same time, we will be making cobalt weapons too, period. That is it. So our next tactical thing will be those. I'm sure of it. I know it. I ain't gonna say anything else. You know what I mean? So it's like splitting hydrogen versus splitting plutonium, and then you go up to the Sarbamba, and then you go further and you're talking cobalt. So they're cutting off the water to farms. They're using water for cobalt. They don't care so much about us and eating as they do about what's going on, and they might be right about their reasoning. So I'm not going to judge it. I'm just whatever, man. I'm popping popcorn, people. You know, I'm sitting back watching what's popping. I'm just popping popcorn. Nothing you can do about it. I mean, everybody wants to live and everybody wants to be outside of the area of disaster. But the truth is that mathematical probability is a lot of people are going to be gone. In a nutshell, that covers it. Gobekli Tepe will be safe, and they'll find it again in another couple thousand years after this next mud flood. These aren't the great floods, but we are talking events that are similar to what happened in the Younger Dryas event. There's a guy that talks about that all the time, and actually the whole South Carolina coast is peppered with impact craters off the coast, even all the way out into the ocean in that direction. So, which makes Plato's story of Atlantis to be even more likely, and it falls into the exact date as that period. So every 3,600 years something happens. Nobody wants to teach people about it because they don't know exactly when. There's no reason to panic because we don't know exactly when. But when it happens, it's like flipping a switch. 400 to 600 mile an hour winds. Head for the hills. Go underground. Go in caves. Hope for the best. Maybe you'll have food. Maybe you won't. You know? Pop popcorn. That's all you can do is pop popcorn. They wouldn't tell us about it. I'm not being pessimistic. This is a cycle. We happen to be at the end of it. So the Great Reset will happen. It could be, time-wise, the next 5 years, the next 100 years. We just know it's happening. We know. So, to pinpoint the exact time, it's within a 100-year range, and we're overdue for something to hit. Something hit so hard once it split the ocean floor, caused that ridge. Cracked the earth like an egg. So, not trying to be doom and gloom, but the fact that they're not going to excavate Gobekli Tepe and they're going to save it for future generations to do, when everybody's got money and they've got $5 million and they're sitting on it to do it, that speaks volumes. And they're smart for leaving it alone. But I wonder if the stones in the thing actually tell about this event and can nail it down to a date. And maybe they even found that and they're like, ooh, we can't show that. Well, it's too late. We've already turned this into a tourist place. Maybe that's part of what they damaged to put in the road. They know what's going to happen. Too much information. They just blew up a ship in Ukraine where they flew a drone into it, blew a hole in it, a Russian warship the other day. And then they showed another drone flying into it in the same hole and blowing it up, and a third drone showing it sink. So they're not going to be happy until Russia gets really ticked off. They're poking the bear. That guy's moving. He's just like, I'm out of here. Is that even his Uber or no? He's like haunting him. That might not even be his ride. You might have to go up front for his ride. He thought that was his ride and it's not even his ride. That's sad. Oh, it is. It's an Uber. They're looping back around to get him. So anyway, that's how it is with Uber. You Uber out, you Lyft back. That's the way it works because the drivers all change over to Lyft at nighttime, in case y'all don't know. And so you have to have both apps. And it's cheaper if you wait. That's how that works. With everything going on, people, I could talk about 1,000 different things. There's a hurricane fixing to hit Texas and Mexico. It's going to be so, well, it was downgraded, I think, a bit, but it's still going to be so messed up, they're going to call it Texaco. They had all the fires and everything down there. They could probably use some rain, but they don't need this. It's going to be a crazy hurricane season. And it's all because of the hot water out there in the Atlantic that Russia calls when they set off that Cobalt Poseidon missile and doing the testing down in Antarctica. It's way too early for this mess. Hurricane season, typically, you talk, man, it should be like August, September, right? They're kicking it off. I can't tell you all the stuff I've seen. I can't talk about it. That's what's crazy. But they're normalizing tactical nukes on the battlefield, and that's fixing to happen, and that's going to radiate half of Europe, and they're trying to act like they're clean, but they're not. And Russia doesn't even use newer technology. They use up all their old stuff first. It's just gotten to be. They're going to enact a draft. It's going to be crazy. And who knows what's going on with Iran since their leader got helicoptered. I'm just saying. I'm not going to talk about that. But they are probably armed with nuclear weapons. They're supplying Russia regardless. Russia might be running Iran at this point since the leadership's gone and they were his biggest ally. He could have his people in there running it. So, or them just at the very least doing what he says. Kind of like what they wanted Crimea for and Ukraine. Another puppet government that they wanted anyway. What to do, people? We need more parking. They're nickel and diamond truckers like crazy. A lot of these companies are using AI and setting up things where they've got a list of people that they actually cut, and it has nothing to do with safety or this or that. They're just getting rid of them and saying, oh, we'll reapply in this many months or whatever. So that they can get a worse contract or a lower paying situation. They're using it as an excuse. Oh, the AI did it. AI is fixing to teach some people a lot of things. They're making full, man, they got AI programs that they've got buried. They're fixing to build a ship offshore that's its own island that is just designed for AI to be on. And it's going to have its own control of weapon systems and this and that. They are building something that could get us into World War III or even create its own war or even go against us. And we're creating it and then putting our hands in our pockets. They got autonomous cars. One just got pulled over by an officer the other day that it made a wrong turn in a construction zone. It was just driving on its own. I don't know if they are going back to where they're supposed to be or going somewhere or being repoed, but these autonomous cars, they're causing trouble. They catch on fire or they hit something. They had one in a house, and they've already got wreckers that are paid to go get them even before there's any kind of a police report to pull them out of wherever they went to. It's a crazy world we live in. People, I'm gonna get off this thing. Just thought I'd do a little live, and I will be doing some extra biblical stories pretty soon. I'll try to get as many versions of the same story as I can off any kind of library's internet file. Oh, and the Vatican is actually putting everything digital. They say they're going to release everything. If they release everything, like everything, there probably will be some stories that were attributed to Christ that they have in the records. I mean, they got statues of crazy, Greek gods and Roman things they shouldn't even have. They got things that are not about Christ, but their records are probably just like that. Every record that ever was. And if they release it on the internet, especially if they translate it to English, I'm all about it. That's just like the Guggenheim Project. That'll be the greatest thing ever. So people, I'm going to get off this thing. Just thought I'd do a little live, let you know. In case you don't know the timeline, look up the Younger Dryas event. There's a guy that does research on that. He actually goes on, he's kind of a big guy with a beard. He goes on Joe Rogan's show a lot. He also was on, I think he was on Coast to Coast. There's people who talked about it on Coast to Coast, talked about Nibiru, the planet that's winged, is what they say. Well, evidently they know what it looks like because they've got older depictions of it. But about every 3,600 years, something happens. And it's strong enough to break the legs of a mammoth and freeze it to death within minutes. Such a hard freeze that you can still eat the meat today, they say. And it's completely frozen all the way through. And the food stays in their mouth and the food stays in their stomach. and they all have those huge bones are just completely sheared off, broken in that way, and they're all pushed in the same direction. Fun times. Why don't they tell you about this in school? Right? So God bless you, people. I'm gonna get off this thing. Y'all have a good weekend, and hope your blow things up day was fun. 4th of July. I'm getting off this thing. I'm out. Peace.